Hey, I'm Andrew Gertig, and at my company Otherscreen, we're building an app that we want our users to be able to invite their Facebook friends to. This screencast is a quick demo of how to do just that. The example app we're going to create builds on Ryan Bates' Railscast Simple OmniAuth, which I highly recommend that you watch. Okay, so let me catch you up to where I am. I'm using Ruby 192 via RVM and Rails version 3.0.9. I've added the jQuery Rails gem for jQuery install, the OmniAuth gem for Facebook authentication, and the Mongrel gem is for my server, and I'm using Mongrel because it handles longer URLs better than WebRick. I have scaffolded a user model with first name, last name, email, FB_UID, and FB_token fields, all string fields. And I have created a sessions controller with create and destroy methods. These look very similar to the simple OmniAuth, except I'm using, like I said, FBUID and FB_token. And you can see that I don't have a provider field. I then created a file called omniauth.rb, and here is where you initialize OmniAuth for Facebook. I have my app ID and my app secret. This is very important. You can see here I've set iframe to true. And what this does is it tells Facebook to redirect outside of the iframe. The scope includes all of the requests for permissions that I would like from this user. In my user model, I've added a method called createWithOmniAuth, which is used inside the sessions controller create method. In my application controller, I have added a method for current user, which will allow us access to the currently signed in user. In my routes.rb file, I have two lines here that will handle the Facebook callback and if the user clicks on the sign out link. Also, I've got a post to home/authorize, which I'll talk about later. In my index file, so this is home/index, which is the root, you can see here that I have a link to log in with Facebook if the user is not signed in. If there is a current user, then we will display that current user's first name and a link to sign out. Let's take a look at what the app looks like right now. So here we can see it's very basic. It's the login with Facebook link because I'm not currently signed in. If I were to click this link, it takes me to auth/Facebook and then redirects. Now that we are essentially caught up to the end of the simple OmniAuth Railscast, let's get started adding the ability to invite friends from Facebook. So what do we want our app to do? We want our users to be able to easily invite one or many of their Facebook friends to our app. We want someone who has been invited to be able to accept the invitation and to be taken to the request for permissions page. And if that person chooses to allow our app those permissions, they should be redirected to our application outside of Facebook and see that they are now signed into our app. Facebook's JavaScript SDK makes this all really easy to do with a requests dialog. To use the dialog, you need a div with ID fb-root, and you must include this JavaScript library. We then use the fb.init method to initialize the library with our app ID. Then we use the fb_ui method to create the request dialog and to show that the invite message what the invite message will be. And here we're going to tell the user that's being invited that the current user's first name, last name, so for me it would be Andrew Gertig thinks you are really awesome, and that will motivate them hopefully to accept. Here we can see that when a user is currently signed in, they see the link to invite your Facebook friends, which they can click on to fire the request dialog. Typically, when a user clicks on the accept button of an invitation, Facebook will redirect them to the URL of your Facebook app. Post your Canvas URL and display an iframe of your application's response. You have the option here of setting your Canvas URL as the URL that OmniAuth uses, which is auth/Facebook. Or we can create another route that can create a redirect on our site so that we can process any data that Facebook may be sending to us in the post. And this was the home/authorize route, which I showed you earlier in Route Start RB. So under our home controller, we have the authorize action method, which if we wanted to, here is where we could handle any of the parameters that Facebook sends in the post. In the authorize.html.erb file, this is where we'll put the JavaScript redirect. Here, this is a very simple redirect using JavaScript, and we could actually process other things here using the JavaScript SDK. We could determine if the user is already logged in and other things of that nature. For our purposes, it's just going to be a very simple redirect. Now let me show you what your Facebook application setup should look like on Facebook. So to do this, you go to facebook.com/developers. You need to make sure that in development that this says localhost 3000 and that your site domain is localhost. Your Canvas page needs to be unique on Facebook. And so you could, like we said, point it to auth/Facebook and it would take you right to the authentication, but you would not necessarily have the opportunity to process any information that Facebook sent along with that post. So we're going to change this to home/authorize. This tab URL will be auto-filled in by Facebook if you don't fill it in yourself. It's really not necessary for what we're doing. We'll save our changes. And then let's see if it all worked. I'm going to sign in with Facebook. I'm currently signed into Facebook as John Manislaw. Allow. Invite our Facebook friends. Here we're just going to invite Jeff. Now we're signed in as John. We've invited Jeff. Let's sign out of the app as John. Sign out of Facebook as John. Sign into Facebook as Jeff. We should have an app request. Here we go. John Manislaw thinks you're really awesome. I accept. Takes us to the request for permission page. Through the redirect that we created. Allow. And now I'm signed in. When we go to the users listing, you should see John and Jeff. And there you go. I hope this was a useful screencast. Thank you very much.